Righto, let's start with the lie everybody loves, because it fits neatly in a little box. Something goes wrong. Someone points at the nearest human being and says, "There you go, human error." Beautiful, tidy, efficient. Completely useless if your goal is to stop it happening again. I've seen 1,000 versions of it. Driver failed to stop, operator forgot the step, worker didn't follow procedure, spotter wasn't paying attention. All those statements might describe what happened at the sharp end. They might even be factually true, but they're not the finish line. They're the front gate. If you stop there, you've done a costume change, not an investigation. That's the trap. The first answer feels satisfying because it gives the brain closure. Humans like closure. Management likes closure. Reports with one neat villain are easy to read and easy to file. But incidents in real workplaces are rarely caused by one lonely mug making one bad choice in a vacuum. There are usually conditions, pressures, missing controls, old decisions, weak supervision, dodgy planning, absent defenses. All the bits of the system that were there long before the event turned ugly. And that's why, in both 5 Whys and ICAM, human error is a starting point, not a destination. If a worker made an error, fair enough. Ask what kind. Slip? Lapse? Mistake? Violation? Then ask the question that matters. Why did that make sense at the time? Or why was it even possible? Because if you don't understand the context, you're just writing fan fiction with high vis on. Safety-wise bangs on about this for good reason. Quality investigations don't settle for the obvious. Effective investigators explore, research, stay neutral, and refrain from premature conclusions. That's not academic fluff. That's the difference between learning and blaming. Take a simple example. A driver runs a red light. If you stop there, your recommendation is probably retrain drivers or remind drivers to obey signals. Revolutionary stuff. But keep asking why, and suddenly you might find the light was hard to see. Vegetation blocked the view. Maintenance was delayed. The council's equipment was out of service. And now you're looking at maintenance management, a real control point. Same event, very different value. That's the challenge for this whole episode. Resist the dangerous comfort of the first answer. Don't marry the first story you hear. Don't confuse an action with a cause. Don't call the report done because you found a person near the bang. Keep asking why, and keep asking it until the system starts talking back. Before you build a theory, build your facts. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? Yet plenty of investigations start with a storyline and then go shopping for supporting evidence like it's a Sunday market. Wrong way round. Data first, story later. This is where PEPO earns its keep. People, environment, equipment, procedures, organization. It's not a fancy acronym for the sake of looking clever in a workbook. It's a discipline, a map. It stops you investigating only the shiny bit that caught your eye. Start with people. Who was involved? Who saw it? What was their training, experience, supervision, workload, communication, physical state, maybe fatigue, maybe stress? Then environment. Weather, light, noise, visibility, surface, congestion, contaminants, whatever was actually there on the day, not what the site usually looks like when someone wants to defend it. Then equipment, condition, design, maintenance, inspection, testing, modifications, labels, suitability for task. Then procedures. What procedure existed? Was it available, current, usable, actually followed? And then organization. That's where the deeper stuff lives. Planning, contractor management, communication, training systems, risk management, feedback loops, supervision structure, previous incidents, actions supposedly closed out. Now, very early on, scene protection matters. Evidence collection should begin as soon as practicable, because scenes don't stay still. Weather changes things. People tidy up. Machines get moved. Settings get reset. Residue gets washed away. Memory starts drifting. Everyone has a little chat in the crib room, and suddenly witness accounts begin sounding suspiciously identical. That's contamination, and it'll gut your investigation if you let it. So secure the scene. Note what's been moved already. Photograph the general area before the close-ups. Get the positions of people, plant, switches, guards, barriers. Record illumination, housekeeping, weather. Preserve documents, logs, photos, statements. If you need a reconstruction, do it carefully and don't create a sequel while you're at it. And here's the big one. Separate what is known from what is guessed. A fact is supported by evidence. The vehicle was on its roof at 7:20. Fact, if supported. The driver was careless. Not a fact. That's a judgment wearing fake glasses. The procedure existed but was not used. Maybe fact. The procedure was adequate. Hold your horses. That needs testing. I like to say, if you can't point to the evidence, you're still in the pub talking rubbish. Good peepo work does two things. First, it broadens your field of view. Second, it helps you distinguish contributing and non-contributing facts. Not everything you find matters. Dates, times, locations, fully serviceable kit, fine weather, some of that may simply be context. Useful, yes. Causal, not necessarily. So don't rush the analysis. A good investigation is set up in the gather phase. Bad data in, bad conclusions out. Simple as that. Now, witness interviews. Investigators either treat witnesses like gold, or they treat them like gospel. First one's sensible, second one's dangerous. Witnesses are clues, not conclusions. Human memory is not a CCTV system tucked inside the skull. It's messy, fallible, malleable. Stress affects it. Trauma affects it. Time affects it. Location affects it. Personality, motivation, distraction, familiarity with the task. All of it shapes what a person notices, stores, and later recalls. That's straight out of the safety-wise material, and it's worth tattooing on the inside of your forehead if you do investigations for a living. A witness can be completely honest and still be incomplete, inaccurate, or influenced by the way you asked the question. That's why the interviewer matters so much. A clumsy interviewer can ruin a good witness. Seen that too many times. General rule: interview witnesses as soon as practical, but not when they're in shock or pain. Introduce yourself. Explain your role and purpose. Establish rapport. Private setting. Minimal distractions. If needed, allow a support person. If culturally appropriate and necessary, get an interpreter, but make sure they don't take over the interview like they're auditioning for a current affairs show. And then start broad. Free recall first. Tell me in your own words what you remember. That's your best opening because it lets the witness recreate events without you stuffing words in their mouth. Then move to open questions. What happened after that? What can you tell me about the work being done? Tell me about the communication between the crew. Open questions give you rich material. Active listening matters too. And no, that's not just nodding like a dashboard dog. It means actually attending, not interrupting, using brief verbal prompts, and letting silence do some heavy lifting. People often remember more if you shut up for 3 seconds. Weird, I know. Then paraphrase. So what you're saying is, that checks your understanding and gives them a chance to correct you. After that, use closed questions to clarify detail. Who? When? Which switch? What color? What side? Was anyone else there? Closed questions are useful. Just don't start with them. Leading questions? Use cautiously and mainly to test a reaction to information you already have. Don't you agree that procedure was inadequate? That sort of thing can distort memory. Loaded questions are worse. How careless was he? Congratulations, detective. You've now contaminated your own interview. Also, let the witness review notes, exchange contact details, and ask at the end if they've got anything else to add or any ideas to prevent recurrence. Sometimes the best practical control in the whole investigation comes from the person everyone nearly ignored. So yeah, witness accounts matter, but they are one data source inside PIPO, not the entire case. Respect them, test them, cross-check them, and never confuse a confident witness with an accurate one. Once you've got your facts, organize the mess. That's where the timeline comes in. Simple timeline, parallel timeline, event and condition chart, time-ordered event chart. Pick the tool that fits. The point is not to make wall art. The point is to put events in logical sequence so you can actually see what happened, when, and where the gaps are. A timeline should cover pre-incident events, the incident itself, and post-incident events until the hazard is under control. Not just the bang. You need the runway before it and the cleanup after it. Quite often, the useful stuff sits well before the incident. Days, months, even years. A design decision, a delayed audit, a change in staffing, a previous action never closed out. That's where the investigation usually gets interesting. The key trick, and this is important, is to identify the point where control was first lost, not just the outcome. People often mix those up. Injury is an outcome. Damage is an outcome. Fire is an outcome. The loss of control is the event where the system first slipped the leash. Using the safety-wise examples, in a fall from height case, the injury wasn't the first loss of control. The first loss of control was the apprentice climbing onto shelving with no working at height controls, triggering the shelves to fall. In a vehicle case, the rollover may be the outcome. The loss of control might be earlier, when traction is lost, or speed and road condition part company. Why does that matter? Because the timeline shows you where to dig. Not every event deserves a full causal interrogation. Some are just sequence markers. Others are key events. Moments where actions were taken, conditions existed, or controls failed in ways that had direct impact on the final outcome. Those are your hotspots. I usually tell people, if your timeline is muddy, your analysis will be rubbish. A proper timeline helps resolve conflicting information and exposes missing data. If one witness says the pre-start happened before the task and another says the crew had already begun, the timeline forces that conflict into the open. If the machine was supposedly inspected after it was already in operation, same problem. Timelines are brutally honest that way. Start with the incident definition. Work backward as far as necessary, then forward until the hazard's controlled. Use actual dates and times where you can. Keep events factual, not deductions. Supervisor left apprentice alone is an event. Supervisor was negligent is analysis. Different shelf entirely. And once the timeline is laid out, you're not guessing where to aim your effort. You can choose the key events that deserve deeper analysis. That's the beauty of it. The timeline stops you thrashing around in every direction and gives the investigation an arc, from first impression to first loss of control to actual consequence to recovery. In other words, the timeline doesn't just tell you what happened, it tells you where the system started to unravel. Here's the bit that separates investigation from decorative paperwork. Analysis. And both 5 Whys and ICAM, when used properly, punish laziness. That's why some people don't like them. They make you work. 5 Whys is simple, quick, and handy for lower-level events. You ask why an event happened, then why that condition existed, and keep going until you hit a control point, a point beyond control, or a point where you need more information. 5 is arbitrary, by the way. Could be 3, could be 7. The point isn't the number. The point is refusing to stop at the symptom. But 5 Whys has limits. It can be subjective. It can follow one causal chain and miss others. It relies on asking the right problem question. So for more significant or complex incidents, that's where ICAM comes in and gives you more structure. ICAM takes the contributing factors from your PIPO Mart 2 and sorts them into 4 buckets. Organizational factors, task or environmental conditions, individual or team actions, and absent or failed defenses. That structure matters because it stops every finding being dumped into the "someone stuffed up" bucket. Organizational factors are the deeper system issues: training, procedures, communication, contractor management, management of change, risk management, organizational learning, culture, design, maintenance management, and the rest. These are the latent conditions. They were there before the event, and they shaped the conditions in which the work happened. Task and environmental conditions are the immediate circumstances: workload, time pressure, lighting, weather, congestion, access, equipment availability, familiarity, fatigue, distraction, passive tolerance of violations, all the stuff that promotes error or undermines defenses. Individual or team actions are the active failures. Errors or violations made in the presence of the hazard. They need verbs, did or didn't do something. Not fatigued, not under pressure. Those belong elsewhere. And absent or failed defences. They're the controls that should have prevented the event or limited the consequence. Procedures, supervision, hazard identification, communication systems, detection devices, PPE, barriers, exclusion zones, emergency response, all that gear. They're inanimate. That's a useful check. The spotter failed to pay attention isn't a defence. The spotting arrangement failed to maintain separation. Now you're getting somewhere. Good analysis uses check questions, coding, and logic. Bad analysis just shuffles blame into boxes. If you stop at the first convenient answer, you'll end up with recycled recommendations and a warm feeling of productivity, while the same risk sits there waiting for its next victim. So yes, use 5 whys where it fits. Use ICAM where the event demands it. But whichever tool you use, don't stop early because the answer is politically convenient, emotionally satisfying, or easy to explain at the Monday meeting. Incidents are multivariate. Systems are noisy. Laziness is expensive. And now the bit everybody claims to care about: recommendations. If the investigation doesn't make the next incident harder to repeat, you've basically written historical fiction with appendices. Recommendations should come from the analysis, not from your favourite generic list. They should address the absent or failed defences and the organisational factors, not just the player, the design of the game. That line matters. Retrain staff is not a magic spell. Sometimes training is needed, sure, but if the real issue is design, workload, contractor management, lousy planning, no risk assessment, or a procedure nobody can realistically use, then training alone is lipstick on a bulldozer. SafetyWise uses SMARTer, and it's a decent discipline. Specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, timely, effective, reviewed. If a recommendation is vague, ownerless, impossible to verify, or never reviewed, it's not a recommendation, it's a wish. Then test it against the hierarchy of controls. Aim high if you can. Eliminate the hazard, substitute it, isolate people from it. Use engineering controls. Administrative controls and PPE are lower order for a reason. The risk still exists, and you're relying on people to keep doing the right thing every single time. Sometimes that's all you've got in the short term, and fine, use it. But don't kid yourself it's the preferred option. A strong recommendation says who will do what, by when, and how it reduces risk. It should also be checked so the fix doesn't create fresh stupidity somewhere else. That's management of change, whether people admit it or not. And don't forget key learnings. 2 or 3 high-level takeaways the wider organisation can actually use. Not a rehash of the corrective actions. Something portable, like all activities should be risk assessed when conditions change. Or clear communication and role definition across crews matters more than anyone thinks. Or repeated non-compliance left unaddressed becomes the system, not the exception. Under all of this sits the mindset I want investigators to keep. Curiosity, humility, accountability. Curiosity, because you've got to want to find out more and not settle for the obvious. Humility, because your first interpretation might be wrong, and witnesses, data, and timelines will humble you if you let them. Accountability, because this work matters. People get hurt when organizations learn slowly. So next time you hear human error tossed out like the case is closed, do us all a favor. Treat it as the opening line, not the punchline. Build the facts, interview properly, lay out the timeline, push the why, sort the causes, strengthen the controls, make recurrence harder. That's enough from me for this round of Cam's Corner. Next time, we'll probably ruin another lazy investigation habit. Looking forward to it.